choices shape the market, our society, and our quality of life. That's why Euroconsumers helps millions of people in their daily choices, providing simple solutions to complex problems. Euroconsumers is a cluster of organizations, a network of people, a group established to protect consumer rights and well-being that brings consumers and companies together in transparent relationships of trust that respect their independence. Our deep understanding of products and consumption gives consumers a credible, expert voice worldwide. We bridge the gap between buyers and manufacturers, between supply and demand. And in this digital age, we create opportunities for all parties to come together in constructive dialogue, partnering to build a future of better products and services. Euroconsumers has the power of a global group that believes humanity can develop, grow, and change for the better, and that we can promote this by uniting millions of consumers in strength and speaking responsibly for them, while simultaneously engaging in relationships of trust with responsible, sustainable companies.
Welcome to everyone watching Start Talking Live and to those watching or listening to the recording. I'm Liz Cole and I'll be your host for today. So right now we're caught in the middle of a sophisticated fraud ecosystem. It cuts across all parts of the digital world and it reaches all people. Everyone's at risk. A recent survey estimated that about 25% of the world's population have lost money to scams or had their identity stolen by criminals in the last year. And we already know that scams can very quickly morph to fit different circumstances like the pandemic or a humanitarian crisis. And we know they can hone in on people's vulnerabilities and their personal circumstances and cruelly exploit them. But now we're also witnessing the emergence of a new technique enabled by advanced technology and AI, which is being weaponized to clone voices, fake faces, or auto-generate phishing messages and really ramp up the scale of fraud. And yet, maybe we don't need to worry too much. In enforcers and consumers' hands, AI can also lead the fight back with, for example, mass-scale monitoring and automated takedowns of any suspicious websites or links. So following on from the Global Anti-Scam Alliances Summit, which was co-hosted by Deco Proteste and Euroconsumers last month, this month's Start Talking is going to discuss who will win as AI enters the ring. Can we win back the internet from scammers, or will fakes and phonies triumph? Euroconsumers is going to be live tweeting the discussion today. You can follow them on @Euroconsumers using the hashtag #StartTalking. And remember, you're all part of Start Talking too, so please put your questions and comments into the chat and we'll get to as many as we can. So first of all, let me introduce our panel for today. We have with us Dr. Hannah Shimko, who is CEO of the Online Dating Association. That's a trade association for the online dating sector, and her members want to create a really positive and safe experience for users and a tech ecosystem that can support innovation in dating online. Welcome, Hannah. And next up, we've got Brent. Brent Carey is CEO of NetSafe New Zealand. Brent is joining us very, very early tomorrow morning, his time. So we thank you so much for your dedication to coming along to Start Talking. NetSafe is New Zealand's independent online safety charity. It's at the forefront of online safety and offers advice and guidance and support to people about online safety and helps them with any incidents that they might report. He's also worked on lots of collaborative cross-border digital safety and justice programs. So welcome, Brent. Not so far away, we have Jurij Abraham, who is Managing Director of the Global Anti-Scam Alliance. He's Managing Director of the Alliance, whose mission is to prevent consumers worldwide from getting scammed. He's also in charge of scamadvisor.com, which is the global blacklist for malicious websites. Before that, he was Director of Research at the Dutch E-Commerce Association and also at E-Commerce Europe, which was the European E-Commerce Association. So we have a lot of expertise in the room today. And I know from all of you, a lot of passion for how we can keep consumers safer online. So let's get started with the context that we're looking at and how AI is being used for bad. Jurij, GASA, the Global Anti-Scam Alliance, has just held its annual summit, as I mentioned, in Lisbon. Can you tell us what you were hearing from the audience on how AI is changing scams?
Yes, and first of all, thank you very much for having me. We see that AI is being used in nearly any kind of digital scam nowadays. I mean, it starts with ChatGPT, where scammers are using that technology to create, very honestly, much better phishing emails than we used to see. I mean, the typos are gone, the grammar mistakes are gone. The emails they're creating with ChatGPT are just way better of convincing people that they're receiving a legit email from the government, police, their bank, etc. Other examples are that AI is being used to create fake online stores. I mean, that's what we do with Scam Advisor. We try to determine what's the likelihood of this website being legit or a scam. And one of the benefits or one of the advantages we have is that scammers in general are lazy. So they copy paste their work, and that allows us to recognize fake online stores and fake investment sites, etc. Now AI is being used to actually generate entire banking websites and entire online shopping stores. And these are way more difficult to recognize because they're unique. Then we see AI also being used on marketplaces. The scammer is using AI to create products which do not exist. And I always like if you tell an AI, please, can you create a bat which looks like Darth Vader? A product is created which really looks like a bat in the Darth Vader theme. But it's a unique product, and consumers can no longer check, hey, what does this product cost elsewhere, and can see if there are price differences and which other parties are delivering the product. The product is really unique, and that's really, really scary. So AI, we see AI being used now across the board in online shopping scams, investment scams, you name it, and romance scams, of course.
Of course, and we'll come on to romance scams next, I think, because I'm going to talk to Hannah. And who your members are online dating apps and sites. What are they seeing? Do you recognise some of the things that Jurij just mentioned there?
Yeah, I think we recognize all of them, and are dealing with very similar issues. I think AI in the dating sector is seen both as an opportunity and as a threat. It's an opportunity in that there are positive uses of AI to help people date better. So whether that's coaching, whether that's helping people create a profile that better represents their personality, helps them make those matches, that's very exciting and can be used by dating services. But of course, on the flip side, you can use that exact same technology to create fraudulent dating profiles. So like Yori said, ChatGPT, we've done very, very similar in our content moderation about seeing that scammers will use the same text, the same messages, it will have grammatical errors. That's disappearing because of processes like ChatGPT. They can be different every single time. We also are seeing, deeper issues similar to what I said about like coaching someone through. So whether that's creating a bot of oneself or of a fake profile to chat to people to try and find those victims, potential people to scam on dating services faster, more easily. Of course, we'll be able to pick up on some of that. And then there's the actual creation of fake profiles. So with the improvements in image and video, generative AI, we're concerned we will see and may already be seeing, but not necessarily always detecting, essentially fake people. This means that the systems we've had in place, like picking up images that are often used by scammers, isn't going to work because they are, of course, AI generated images. And it's essentially going to make our job much, much harder. There's also concerns around things like creating explicit images that aren't real but may use a real face. That can play into sextortion, which is kind of a part of romance scams and fraud to try and extort people out of money. So it's essentially everything you already said is also happening on dating services.
Okay, that's interesting about the deep fakes, because I think that's got a lot of attention in terms of politicians and what that impact that might have on like democratic systems. But that there's a really specific use case there of that you're creating a whole new person who's not famous that might be trying to link up with you. And how quickly have these new cases come onto the scene? Is it quite sudden, or has it been a slow burn for a while?
Actually, I think quite sudden in that, before the advent of a wide knowledge of resources like ChatGPT and others, I assume it was used. It's not, we've had chat bots for a long time, but I think this ability to create the level of content has been relatively recent. And obviously the wider kind of news media picking up on AI and talking about it has the unintended consequence of scammers also learning more about AI and how they can use it to their advantage.
Sure, absolutely. And Brent, can you tell us again from the New Zealand perspective and your direct experience, what have you seen in terms of the things that people are reporting to you?
Yeah, thank you. Similar to what Hannah said, sextortion is a real growing global trend. And here at NetSafe, we've had about a 288% increase in sextortion complaints. And that has a worrying development where the scammers are actually following through and actually not just threatening a person with blackmail, but actually posting content, especially on the dark web. And we've been counseling and dealing with a lot of teenage boys who are actually extorted more for money, whereas the gender balance, females tend to be extorted more for more images. And so these are worrying trends in relation to experience in New Zealand, and it's also global. Also, just fraud in general is an underreported crime. So here in New Zealand, we have about a $35 million loss of scams that is just reported to NetSafe, but we're part of a broader fraud and crime ecosystem. But the police data last year showed that 93% of fraud and deception isn't reported to police. And so cybercrime in general is pretty much underreported. So trying to work out the true cost of that is quite difficult. We did the Global Anti-Scam Alliance country report where we asked 1,000 New Zealanders what their experience with scams was like. And we did that in August, and nearly 2/3 of New Zealanders have said they're scammed once a month. And scams are appearing in multiple ways. So we've got text, we've got social media, and we've got instant messaging apps all frequently being used by the scammers. The Hey Mum WhatsApp scam is a global trend, and that's preying again on people's connections to family. And also we're seeing social engineering as well. So people using LinkedIn profiles and that to really tailor now using AI, those initial contacts. And Gmail and Facebook are the most used platforms by New Zealanders. And Instagram and WhatsApp are pretty much the top 5 platforms that are used by scammers. I think another worrying trend is that people think this is an older person's issue, that they're more susceptible to scams. But some research in the US say that you sort of Gen X are quite a target for scammers. So I think, understanding the demographics in this space is quite interesting. And again, conscious and unconscious bias as well around who's a typical victim of a scam. And I think everyone is. So tailoring those messages are really important.
Yeah, I find it really interesting that there's the image side in creating using photos or creating something very convincing, but the language and the spoken and the text is equally fascinating, because that's just clearly that's the other side of the coin of this amazing tool, which can help us find information and summarize it in different styles. It's obvious that it's going to be used in this way, and really hard to see how you would know. I mean, do you think people know if they've been scammed by an AI? I mean, because I'm sure lots of people say, of course I do, but do you think that they do?
Well, I think it's just people's tech confidence in general. If you talk to young people, they go, "Oh no, I can totally see that's fake." And then you talk to someone else, and fake image bingo. It's like, which one is actually not real? So yeah, we've got to get into that media literacy space, I think, and educate everyone about what's real and what's the blur between what's authentic and inauthentic is actually really an issue. So I think if you talk to them, they say, young people go, "Yeah, that's totally fake." And when we've been teaching in classes online safety, and we often put up a carousel of images and ask them to spot it, and most of the time they get it wrong. So yeah, interesting.
Yeah. And would you agree with that? Do you think young people are more at risk?
Yes, I mean, as Brent was already saying, a report from I think it was the Federal Trade Commission in the US said, "Hey, we see more young people being scammed," but we get the same kind of reports now from China, Sweden, the Netherlands, and a few other countries. And it's part that, I mean, elderly were a easy victim, but scammers are broadening and they're specializing. So we see scammers really specializing in kids 8 to 12 playing Roblox. So they only focus on scamming kids on Roblox and trying to get into Papa's PayPal and credit card account. I mean, as only 0.05% of all cyber criminals are getting caught, it's a great business to be in. So they're specializing, some in students, some in elderly, some in kids, some in lonely men or lonely women, etc.
And but that's more down to the data and knowledge they have about them, or are you seeing AI being used to do that kind of targeting?
Definitely. Maybe give a personal example. A few months ago, we're always looking for more developers for scamadvisor.com, and I was approached via LinkedIn by a developer and from Serbia. And he showed me his GitHub account, which is his kind of resume for developing. It looked very good. His LinkedIn profile looked very good. So I proposed, let's have a video call. And when the call started, he wasn't sharing his video. So I said, "Oh, I would like to see you." And he said, "Well, my camera on my laptop is broken. Give me 5 minutes and I will move to my desktop." And after 5 minutes, the conversation continued. And I didn't think of it as, "Hey, this is a deep fake or this is wrong." I just had some feeling in my belly, this is weird. And I asked him, "Could you remove your glasses?" And at that moment, the connection broke, and I tried to contact him again. And only when a few weeks later, I got the exact same text with the exact same GitHub account, just a different LinkedIn profile with a different name, that I thought, okay, this is a scam, because he was pushing very much for getting the first $1,000 salary before he started.
Okay. Yeah.
And it was a deep fake, but I did not recognize it. I was only lucky that I asked somewhere, gut feeling, "Hey, would you mind removing your glasses?" Because the accent, the mouth, it wasn't 100%.
Wow.
So
Okay.
and that's an example where AI is being used, very specialized to scam people.
Sure, really targeted. Yeah. And also, I think what the other thing that we've seen is the organizations like yours or like NetSafe or like Euroconsumers country members being cloned and used to further scam people. So the places that are trying to protect people are then being victims of sort of being faked, which is really worrying. If anyone who's watching, do you think that you've ever been scammed by an AI, and do you think you'd know? So interested to have any comments in from people there. I suppose the thing that strikes me is a lot of the evidence reports, they're coming through, but I struggle to find any sort of solid evidence base of it, or like a complete coherent data set. So how can we record it? Is it being recorded properly? What do you think, Yura? Are we capturing what's really happening with AI
No.
scams?
We're not, but we're not even doing that for phishing emails, which have been around for the last 25 years. And that's because of several reasons. I mean, people don't like to report scams because they feel ashamed, they feel tricked. So we know that about 7% of all scams are actually reported. And they're reported to many different organizations who unfortunately do not share data. I mean, they're reported to you, to us, to law enforcement, to financial authorities, to social media, to review sites. And as a result, there's no unified picture of what's going on. So I wish we had it for the simple scams, and we don't. And AI is brand new. And I think many consumers don't even will recognize that they have been scammed by an AI because it's just too good to recognize.
Brent, same to you from your national perspective, because you collect reports. Are you collecting them specifically?
Yeah, so we call it taxonomy in the online safety space, and so we take 25,000 harm reports from New Zealanders every year, and so we tend to have a classifier. And it's fair to say that we've got new keywords for some of this. So synthetic wasn't really a keyword we were tracking, 6 months ago. And what we're trying to do is try and link up globally to some sort of glossary of terms. So sort of the World Trade Organization, UNESCO, those sorts of global forums are trying to actually come up with glossaries. So we're watching that. So we also have a data sharing agreement template. So we have a 25-year data lake for New Zealand. So we're sharing de-identified data sets with other companies and that to try and get a better understanding around what the sort of threat landscape looks like. So we produce quarterly reporting at NetSafe, tracking some of these trends. We called out sextortion last quarter. So yeah, definitely I think more agencies like NetSafe that have history here are wanting to sort of turn over their data so that we can get ahead of the game. So AI is one of those emerging areas. Disinformation and misinformation was a hot topic over the COVID period. It's dropped to number 4 for concern for New Zealanders, and fraud and scams is growing as more concerning. So that's sort of what we try and keep an eye on.
Okay, that's great. And Hannah, there's a link with reporting, obviously, and Juraj mentioned it there, that you just don't get necessarily the data that you need on what's really happening, because people still, and they really shouldn't, feel ashamed and embarrassed if they've been scammed. And I think, thanks, Juraj, for saying that you, as head of one of the biggest anti-scam organizations in the world, even you weren't sure. So I think people really shouldn't feel that they're doing anything wrong if they fall victim to these scams. But Hannah, if you were a victim of a romance scam and it turned out to be a bot that was romancing you, do you think that's going to make you feel even more embarrassed about reporting it?
I'm not sure exactly how someone might eventually realize that they were talking to a bot, because I think in romance fraud, what we're going to see is an AI and human working together on romance fraud. So I think that whether the initial work is done with a bot and the images are generated through AI and the a bit like Yori and Brent were saying, the liveliness check or the verification is fooled, much like the pretend applicant to get through onto the dating site. So AI brought this profile in. Maybe the first conversations were done by a bot, but there's a human behind this, potentially overseeing a multitude of profiles, seeing which ones are moving forward. Is the AI good enough to detect who's the best target? Is there a human in the loop at some point? Moving on to the next element of discussion, is there a video with a human versus an AI generated video? So I think it will be difficult to figure out, and you're always very aware of this. If someone's not expecting and they do get that funny feeling, they may be conditioned to overlook it. That's what we see in romance fraud a lot, is this conditioning and manipulation to make people believe it. So they may put aside any questions or fears and say, oh, I'm sure this is a real person. And as you say with the reporting in romance fraud, although there can be huge sums of money lost, often the emotional and mental impact is even greater than the financial impact, because most romance fraud is a longer term fraud in which there might be months or even years of connection between the fraudster and the victim. They're incredibly emotionally invested in this relationship. There's an element of coercive control. It's very similar to domestic abuse, language manipulation, mental manipulation, isolation from friends and family. And this is why in romance fraud we have some of the most difficulty with reporting, that even though the sums are massive and we do have those who immediately report, the stigma and the fear and the shame is huge. And there are horrific stories of people, being on the edge of mental breakdown, suicide, etc., from these horrible things. So I don't know if adding AI into it would make it better or worse. Would it make it feel more like it could be reported? If it couldn't, and where that will kind of fall. I think the most important thing I would ask of anyone who's watching who is a consumer and has this experience is, even if you don't fall for a scam or a fraudster on a service, to report that, even if you haven't been a victim in the sense of losing something to it. That's how we don't build up a full picture in dating. So we don't even know necessarily if we can look into, was it an AI? How long were they on the site before they were removed, etc.
Okay, but I need to move away from the idea of thinking there's an army of bots who are out there with complete personalities romancing people. It's more that it's involved at different stages, and there will be people involved helping the system to learn and what works in terms of manipulation. So yeah, okay, that's really interesting. At this stage.
Can't say for the future.
Okay, well, maybe we'll try and get a prediction later. But I wanted to come in on the other side of that, because Brent, you actually use chatbots at NetSafe. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, obviously scammers work around the clock. And so having access to legal information is really important 24/7. So about a year ago, we introduced Cora, which is our chatbot. And so that runs 24/7. And obviously, as Hannah said, there's quite a lot of stigma and shame associated. So what has been quite interesting, we didn't start with a whole knowledge base and sort of reverse engineer question answer. What we've done is every sort of 48 hours, we craft question and answer based on what people are actually asking us for help. And in this sort of image-based abuse, sextortion space, we've actually had more people reporting to NetSafe as a precursor. They've gone through, especially if it's in relation to like sharing of nudes, sort of image-based abuse, and concern around whether there's a need to further on share that with an independent agency like NetSafe, which we're interested in URLs and de-identified information and hashing, and that as a way to help people not be re-victimized. So we're also involving survivors in some of the language. So that's been a really great positive use of AI, if you like, to think about, how we can get legal information out to people so that they're not dealing with these issues on their own. Yeah. And so I think, chatbots are a great example of AI for good.
Yeah.
And so I think we're going to see more use of chatbots as well in this space to fight the scammers.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. So almost like another layer. So if you do feel embarrassed or very, very upset, then it's a slightly more, there's a bit of more space between you to feel comfortable reporting that. That's bringing us really nicely onto the next section, where we're going to look at how the good guys can use AI. Can it come to the rescue for all of these problems that we've just heard about? So Brent, I'll return to you because the Cora chatbot you talked about was part of the NetSafe lab. That's quite unusual for an NGO and charity. Can you tell us why setting up the lab was important and what it does?
Yeah, so we have a few technical staff at NetSafe, and we have a research arm. And so we used to have a different model, and we decided to change that to partner more globally. So we launched the lab about 6 months ago. And what we've done is we've built an army of like-minded people globally. And so, for example, some of the stuff that we're doing in the lab, we're working with the Alan Turing Institute in the UK, where we're doing machine learning in relation to Twitter. And one of the projects is people get very passionate about their football stars and often pile on and give feedback. And so one of our projects is to inject ourselves into some of these passionate fan conversations with facts around their statistics, so they don't always miss that goal. Here's the actual real facts. So that's been an interesting counter narrative project that we're doing in that space. We've also partnered with the Auckland University in relation to phishing scams to look at the behaviour side. So you do all this legal education, all this awareness raising, but what makes the person actually click on a link that sixth time? Or so that's a human behaviour study that we're doing over the next couple of years. And so we've also got 4 students in Stanford coming out in March to look at how they can tailor online safety messages for what we call one of the lost demographics, the 18 to 30-year-olds who can smell a brand trying to talk to them, don't want to be talked to and educated about online safety. These students are around 27 years old, so we thought we'd lean into their lived experience as well and get some advice. So that's sort of an example of sort of that partnership model globally that we're looking at to form some sort of strong alliances.
Yeah, and some of those tools are using machine learning, I understand. So
that's right. So Rescam is an example. So we did that in 2017 where we scammed the scammers. We had them in an infinite loop where they didn't know they were talking to a bot. We're about to relaunch that in the next couple of months, and so we're using AI there to create personas and waste the scammers' time. So yeah, we had more than 1 million global users of Rescam in 2017. So we need to gear up for probably more users this time.
So how does that work? If someone suspects they're getting a scam message, they forward it to Rescam, and the scammer ends up in a chat with another with a chatbot who's wasting his time. Yeah,
that's the simple nature of it. Yeah, so the AI takes over.
So we could have a bit of the internet where there's AI scam bots talking to AI counter scam bots.
Yeah.
Okay. It doesn't seem like a good use of the internet, but never mind. If that helps, then that is going to be great. Juraj, can I come to you? Are you seeing the rise of other tools that are powered by AI to recognize fraud and scams?
Yes, on a positive note, yes. We see it already. I mean, one of our partners is FeedSci. They use AI technologies to monitor banking transactions, and they can see that. Well, a very simple example. Okay, this person has been sending has a profile of a elderly person, why is she suddenly spending 30,000 euros in crypto? And of course, that's also something a human can see, but AI can see many, many more connections than we can. We see it also with if you are logging into your banking app, the way you behave, the way you keep your device is very personal. And another partner of us, BioCatch, is using AI to recognize, hey, somebody is logging in as Yori on his banking app, seems to be his phone, but it's not his behavior. The real challenge I foresee now is there. I mean, maybe the example which Brent gave a few minutes ago, that your son is calling, he's in Thailand and he is asking for money. It's his voice, it's his face, but it's a deep fake. And there we don't have the like we have with antivirus software now, that there's no software out yet which is protecting consumers from those kind of scams.
Right.
I do think in 2-3 years we will have it, because I already see the first pilots, the first test where you can install software on your mobile and they look at how your mouth is moving and they look at the sound and see if that's working. So I think we will go through the same phase as we went with viruses in the beginning of the 90s. Viruses were taking over the world. And then 10 years later, we had good antivirus software. We were able to turn the tide there. It's going to be the same here, but we do need time and we do need money to invest in this technology to protect consumers better.
Sure. Hannah, I'll bring you in here. You wanted to make a comment on that?
It was a comment actually on what Brent and Yori were saying about kind of like wasting time.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. Just briefly, we do it in dating as well, and the same idea. So rather than obviously have the victim or anyone real in the loop, we put the scammers, some of my members put the scammers into a sandbox essentially, and the scammers chat to each other, and then the teams are able to watch that, and their content systems, which we can talk about later, are able to watch it and learn and understand the behaviors of scammers even better. So yeah, I think that's a growing area of knowledge, is watching scammers.
Yeah. So it sounds like it may not be how we want to spend the innovative resource of the internet, but it sounds like this is a place where we really need to apply the best minds and the best techniques and the best understanding of human behavior to improve things. I think that's really interesting, the point you made, George, about timing, saying, yes, these things are coming through and we can imagine the equivalent of antivirus software, but it would take a few years. Hannah, your industry's been using content moderation tools for a while. So how long do you think it will take to get things up to be able to meet the AI, the negative force of AI in dating?
Yeah, it's actually a great question, and I think something that we're grappling with. As you say, we've used content moderation for a long time, alongside activities like putting the scammers in a sandbox to learn from them and waste their time. We've learned about behavior of bad actors on dating services, whether that's fraud or whether that's other harms, how they act, what they look like, how we can catch that. Does a profile need to be watched for a few days? Does it need to be immediately taken down? That system uses AI-based machine learning, most of them. Now, traditionally, it was machine learning where it was humans in the loop. Now, less often need a human in the loop to learn what are these actions and how can we keep developing that. But as I said at the start, this around synthetic media, deep fake media, scammers not behaving like the scammers we know. We're going to have to learn what they're doing. We're going to have to, so whether if it's behavior, we need to learn about the behavior and the hallmarks of AI in the loop. If it's images, we're involved in some initiatives like the content authenticity initiative around should all images and video produced by AI have some kind of embedded watermark. What will happen is, of course, all the good players will do that and the bad actor AI generators won't do that. So, not sure that solves the problem, but obviously it will teach us a lot about recognizing AI in the loop. And then I think the third part of that is working on intelligence So, Yuri mentioned some great examples of using AI to learn, but also going into places like the dark web, seeing what scammers are talking about, seeing how they're using AI, how are they generating things, because that can then inform services of what might be coming next. Because I think every time we innovate in using AI for good, in content moderation, the scammers then figure out a way to get around that. So it's a constant kind of updating of what we're doing. But I think at least lots of the tech world and the online safety world is now focused on trying to fight this AI threat. So, more sharing, like you already said, we need more of it, but more sharing of information, more sharing of learnings between banking, between dating, between other services online. I think it's getting better in that space.
Can you just say a bit more about going into the dark web to learn? I mean, is that what, and everyone can maybe come in this, is that a common thing in the anti-scam fight? And how does that work?
Yes. I mean, the darker web where criminals are exchanging their data, their knowledge, their tricks, and it's a little bit like peeking and see how the criminals work and learn how you can better fight them. So yes, it's quite common.
Okay. Interesting. And I think the other thing that really strikes me in terms of, and it's back to this question of consumer awareness, because I suppose the approach to raising awareness has always been about, don't do this, do that, keep, these are the things to look out for. And that paradigm seems to have shifted. And so my question, really difficult one to answer, is what tools can consumers use now if things are getting really sophisticated? Or do we need to just stop focusing on awareness and work behind the scenes? So I'm interested, Brent, maybe for you, what do you think about that?
Well, prevention and education is important. So is incident response, and so is remediation. So it's part of the toolkit, I guess. In that prevention and education space, obviously starting early and starting young is really important. So building it into curriculum is really something that we need to think about, but also being tech neutral, I think. So some of like what Hannah talked about, the behavior stuff is really important. And I think that we need to build a lot more of that in. So, and not focusing on the next piece of tech, because there's, a digital literacy and a digital divide as well often, and we have to bridge all of those. So some of the way to bridge that is to focus on the behavior stuff that we want to change. So we're spending a lot of time sort of in that sort of media literacy, in the health and well-being curriculum, and that to try and make sure that we're reflecting what society's values are for the time. And so, I think there's always a role for education and prevention.
Yeah. But maybe those sort of very simple messaging of do's and don'ts is not the only thing that's going to help. Yuri, can I come to you on that question, the tricky question of consumer awareness?
Yeah, I still believe in consumer awareness. Let that be clear. But there have been a few studies now. One of the Hague University. And it seems there's no direct relationship between increasing consumer awareness and reducing scam victims. And they are still busy with this study, but their theory is that if you make people more scam aware, they become more confident. If they become more confident, they start to act more quickly on the internet, and they get scammed anyway. The second doubt I have about scam awareness, and I do think it's something we must do, and it's good to do, is scammers are becoming too good. And we cannot rely on the simple tricks we used in the past. Like if it's too good to be true, probably is. Scammers are smart enough that they don't make huge gaps anymore between, okay, this is the normal price of the product and this is the price I'm offering it for. We I mean, what the study Brent and I did in New Zealand and also in other countries, people are still using rules we taught them 20 years ago, where check if there's a SSL certificate, if the communication is secure. It's free nowadays. Every scammer uses an SSL certificate, but I don't know the exact figures from New Zealand from top of my head, but in many countries, 20 to 30% of the consumers still use that trick we learned 20 years ago and no longer applies. And I think, Hannah, it was you stating at our summit that, I mean, scammers use video. It's not that Roman scammers don't want to share their face online. They do. They don't care. I still believe in awareness, but I do believe that we really have to invest in tools to protect consumers, like we did with antivirus software.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I suppose that's something that we just don't often think about because it's established that that's there to protect you and it's worked for so long. Hannah, you on this question of awareness?
Yeah, just very briefly, because I couldn't agree more with everything Brent and Yori have said. Just that some of our advice that's been around for 20 years still rings true for romance scams, and it's why I'm still very much in favor of consumer awareness. Things like don't send money to someone that you've never met in person. That works whether you're talking to an AI bot, a scammer with a fake picture, a fake person, still holds true. So it's really important to still do that level of consumer awareness and to tailor that awareness. And I think we talked about this a lot at the summit to different cultural groups, different age groups. Yesterday I was actually at another conference about scams, which was great, and talking to an older gentleman who goes and talks to groups of retired people in person about scams and how much more impact that has than any sort of online interaction. So really important to have that kind of breadth of consumer engagement.
And that's interesting, isn't it? Because there's me thinking about AI-powered tools to fight scams, but maybe it's a bit simpler than that. Maybe it's, talking to people or videos available online with someone really opening up about their experience is going to have as much of an impact. So we probably shouldn't just rely on the tech. I also was wondering, Hannah, and maybe to all of you as well, it really feels like scams are everywhere and everyone I know now has been impacted. I mean, for Hannah, do you think it will get so bad that people will just stop online dating? And for the others, do you think people are just going to be put off by lots of things that they now do on the internet?
I mean, I don't think people will stop online dating because of the benefits that it brings, of that ability to meet people you wouldn't meet otherwise, who share your values, share your culture, share your interests. It's changed the dating world, but I do think dating services will keep innovating to try and address the issues and the challenges that come with online dating. Focus on both online and in-person engagements. That takes some of that question of not meeting in person. I think that we will have to keep innovating in a constant state of war, I suppose, with the bad actors. So we'll innovate, we'll come up with technology that will help us in this, will improve our consumer awareness, and then bad actors will also use the same tools to then improve what they do. So I think that my hope is it will never be so bad it will put people off online dating or using other online services. I think that's the way our world is going, but I think it will, be a responsibility to keep working in that space.
Yeah. What do the others think? Do you think this is going to be, destroy trust so much that we turn our backs on digital services? It seems unreal to think of, but
no, I do want to comment on that. I do think scams are hurting trust in the internet. We already see that in the cryptocurrency market. There's so many scams there that people are really turning their back on crypto because they think, it's not reliable. And we know that economies where there's a lot of trust, they grow, they foster. Economies where there's little trust, they don't grow or they shrink. So I do think we really have to fight very hard in two ways. We need to really collaborate as much as possible to share data to identify new scams fast. And then the second part, and that's even more harder, we need to catch them. We need to go from 0.05% of all cyber criminals being caught to a normal ratio of 30 to 40%, meaning that you don't go free. And that's a big challenge for all of us, I feel.
There needs to be any deterrent, doesn't there? Which there just doesn't seem to be at the moment.
Yeah.
I'm going to come to the final question now, which is a chance for all of you to answer the big question. Who do you think will win in the AI battle of the scams? Will it be the criminals or enforcers? And what do you, the good guys, need to succeed? So, Hannah, I'll come to you first, please.
Yeah, so I guess it picks up on what I was kind of saying about trust in the internet. So it's about, I don't think that we will lose the battle, but I also don't think there will be any winning in that, like you already said, trying to bring the balance in that it is so bad that trust is lost. I think transparency is really important, and some of the legislation we're seeing in online safety is very focused on transparency. What are companies doing to solve this? I think that builds that trust up. Obviously, we don't want to be so transparent that bad actors can use that to their advantage. So again, I think it's about being transparent in the battle, which is a horrible word to use in a way, but that, you know, we're always working and we're trying to protect consumers, trying to protect those in our services, and working always against the bad actors to try and balance it out.
Okay, thank you. Yuri, your final word. Who do you think will win in the battle?
We will win. And we will win because at the summit, it was also said by somebody, it takes a network to bring down a network. And we do need some time, but our network is much bigger, better. We will win this.
Thank you. And can I just add something, that all of us consumers and anyone who's using the web is part of that network, and reporting if you suspect a scam or if you've been victim of a scam is part of that fight back, because you shouldn't have no shame about it. If you're not sharing that information, then we have less resources to work with. So everyone is part of that battle. Brent, can I come to you for your final comment on who will win the AI battle of the scams?
Yeah, I think we're in the disruption business, so we need to disrupt. And so I think humans will win because we're trying to get in front of it. And the best is, I think we can turn the tide. And as others have said, that's through networks, it's through policy changes, legislative changes. It's also funding. So often people, we always say having an empty chair at a network to think about who's not in the room and who's not represented. So in this space, making space for survivor stories, making space for law enforcement, when you're trying to reframe some of this problem, you can make it solvable, because it does feel so big. But if we just break it off into little bits, I think we can make some inroads.
Excellent. Thank you all so much. And thanks to everyone who's been watching and everyone who's listening to the recording or re-watching. Thank you, Hannah, Yuri and Brent. And remember that every month we have our Start Talking webinar, and we pick a key consumer issue, anything from crypto to inflation or ChatGPT to influencer marketing. And you can watch them all back at euroconsumers.org/webinars. Look out for next month's event, and please follow at Euroconsumers on Twitter, X, and on LinkedIn for all the latest consumer news. Thanks again to my wonderful panelists. Thank you, Brent, for being awake in the middle of the night. We really appreciate it. And thank you, Yuri and Hannah, for your contributions. It's been great to have you. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Power to the people. Someone used to sing. And while singing is not our expertise, empowering people, empowering you is what we do. And in tune. How? We test, analyze, and compare products and services to ensure that they meet what you are looking for and comply with the law. We inform, advise, support, and represent consumers. And we do this in chorus, which is to say in several countries at the same time. Belgium, Italy, Spain, Portugal, and Brazil. Then we dialogue, collaborate, and sue companies if needed to make sure people's and your needs are in the best hands. And in the end, we improve the market and we all win. Maybe it does deserve a song. What do you think? Euro Consumers. Empower people, improve the market.